Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to Eating Peace this week. I'm at a beautiful little Brighton Bush, Oregon hot springs cabin, and it's a lovely conference center where I teach an annual retreat in the work of Byron Katie, and which this deep form of self-inquiry, which you've probably, if you know me by now, I love so much. It's just such a simple way to inquire on anything stressful in your life. Now, while this retreat is not specifically for people with eating issues, people tend to ask me, of course, about eating and recovery from any issues with eating and feeling awkward about extra weight or not liking parts of their body. And we eat meals together and we have sessions together and we're all here. And at hot springs, people are also in swimsuits, and sometimes there's clothing optional hot springs pools that people go in to dip in and take in the mineral waters. And there's a steam sauna and all these things here that are done naturally. So people have their body issues appear and they feel awkward or self-critical, or like they just choose not to ever wear shorts or wear their bathing suit at all in front of anyone else, because they came to do the work of Byron Katie, but they really don't want to have their body be seen. This happens every time I do the retreat here at this particular place, and it's really just so amazing to dive into that as an invitation, an offering to anybody that has trouble with it, something in their body, and have people actually do the work on it, on that, maybe that body part or that thing you don't like. What I wanted to share with you all, while we all have parts of our bodies that we think are imperfect, maybe even ugly or don't look right, it just doesn't have to be taken so seriously. And it can be incredible to notice what your thoughts are about that. So what I remember is when I first started having some issues around food and eating was very close to the same time that I thought I should be thinner. So I had this belief, I should be thinner. And then out of that thought rose thoughts about food and eating almost immediately. And one of the most huge culprits that caused a lot of stress and anxiety was, I shouldn't eat that, and I could have my list. I should eat less. Less is better. I shouldn't enjoy my food so much. I shouldn't eat things with sugar in it or whatever. Everybody's got their certain items. I should be as perfect as possible with the food that I'm eating. And less is better. Less is better. Less is better, because you get thinner. The way you get thinner is you eat less. And it just becomes this incredible loop, because something deep inside the body and in the mind, was my experience, is totally sick of all that stuff. It doesn't want to eat less. It wants to be a normal human organism that is being fed and nurtured by food, wanting to live and eat to live and live to eat, and just enjoy it. So actually, the very thought of wanting to be thin and having that as a deep, deep obsessive drive is something that causes an effort to change things to do with eating. Changing things with your eating and restricting it or making it less actually drives a terribly deep hunger that just can't be overcome with willpower and force and all that kind of stuff. But I thought we would question today the incredible urge or desire to be thin and be against being fat. Heavy in any way, thighs big, stomach big, belly the wrong size, something sort of weighted and heavy and large. You can sit down if you like to really study your own inquiry with this and make a list or begin to journal about what you think you'd have if you were thin. Why do you want that? What's so great about it? Do you think you'll attract people and they will think well of you? I mean, often that's the case. When I began to think that as a teenager, that's what I thought. And that will be deeply embedded even as an adult. We just, people will admire us, they will think of us as powerful, they will think of us as strong or interesting or attractive, they will treat us well. Um, we won't be shunned, we'll be included. All these things start to become laid upon thinness and how your body looks. And we become so identified with the body. I am my body. And this thin thing better be what I am, because I want to be a good person and I want to be included and I want people to be attracted to me so that I fit in and stay connected and feel loved in the world. Gets to be a very like sort of survival, basic survival at the core of being included. I don't want to be fat because then I'll be excluded and people won't like me and I won't fit in the world and I won't get a partner and I, won't be part of the clan, which usually if you question it, it's never true, never truly true. But people sometimes do have experiences of being called fat by other children or feel like they're rejected by their parents, and that you might have stories like that, experiences that you've had that are painful, where you feel like I have proof that being heavy causes rejection, so I have to go for the thin thing. One, I sigh deeply because it's such a trap. One of the most powerful things you can do at a very, very deep level, and it's almost strange to explain because our culture is so dominated by it here in the United States. Many Western countries of the Western world are dominated by it. Our parents have lived it, our peers have lived it, our siblings, almost everybody that's around us has the idea that success equals thinness and failure equals fatness. And so, of course, we all want to be thin, do we not? If I'm thin, I'll be happy. If I'm fat, I won't be. I'll be unhappy. It seems simple, but it's absolutely incredible to question. Thinness will cause happiness, connection, love, attention, attraction, joy in your body, whatever. Is that true? I did not find that to be true. I was unhappy and miserable when I was thin, and I was just as unhappy and miserable thin as I was when I was heavy. And I think when I was thin, I practically thought, well, at least I'm thin. I'm miserable, but at least I'm thin. And now, I even had I'm miserable when I'm heavy, and I'm also heavy. But really, when you get down to it, the misery was there. There was no relief from that. It didn't bring in a wonderful freedom. There was no freedom in my thinness. I had to be vigilant, and I was watching every bite I ate, and I was feeling guilty when I overate, and then running 5 miles or purging in some particular way, vomiting, very extreme. But it's the same mentality as deciding to restrict your food. So, most peaceful approach is let's just stop restricting. Let's stop having the goal be thinness and restricting our food to get there. What if you just let go of the thought that thinness is success? What if we turn that around? Who would you be without that story? What if it was like when you were 3 years old and nobody was telling you or talking to you or didn't have any comprehension of fat and thin and having to somehow manage or regulate or control or measure your food and make sure you had it in the right order so that you remained thin? What if there was just freedom? like a natural, like animals that eat and then don't eat and stop when they're full and eat when they're hungry. And there is no thinking in the mind about making sure you reduce, eat less, watch out, be careful, don't take an extra bite of that. What if we just didn't do any of that at all and we just dropped that story? I know it's a very, very big invitation. It almost feels impossible. It almost feels like some of us have been thinking that for 50 years. How can we imagine what it's like to not have that thought that thin is better and fat is bad? And the way you get thin is you eat less. So you need to start restricting your food. Who would you be without that story? It's pretty remarkable. What if you were free to not have that story in your life? I find that when I am not driven by an urge to be thin, I wound up being a normal weight. I just wound up like that. Isn't that the way we want to get thin? You just happen to turn out that way? And you might be saying, that's impossible for me. Never, 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 never. That's what I said. That's what I said. And just to be okay with the body the way it is, the body as you have it, the body with the curves you have, or the shape you have, the style you have, and just know that is your God-given body. That is your biologically built body. That's the one you've got. And it's okay. And you also were born with a mechanism for feeling hunger and fullness. So we're just going to not restrict. In fact, the restriction of the food, the concentration on making an effort to eat less, less than you need, less than you want, the concentration and attention towards doing that makes more focus happen on the food. This was my experience. You think about food even more. And when you think about food even more, or you feel rebellious, or irritated, or in prison, or like you just aren't liberated in a way that can be, a free human being living on the planet, sometimes needing to eat food. It just causes a great problem. So let's just begin this whole entry into practicing eating peace with dropping this intense restriction and this goal to be thin. It does not mean you're going to stuff food in your face. You don't want that either. It doesn't mean you're going to start eating and eating and eating and consuming and ravaging everything in sight. Because that isn't what we want either. That's got some sort of drama to it that is totally absent of peace. But at least we're going to just drop the intense drive to thinness. So there's probably more things to do than only that simple thing. But I saw people here at this beautiful retreat, gathered together and going ahead and getting excited to go into this steam sauna. It's a natural steam sauna at these beautiful springs that have been built out of wood. And it's dark and steamy with only little windows above, and people can't really see each other's bodies. It's beautiful in the late evening, but all kinds of shapes and sizes and ages of bodies moving about kind of in a dusk twilight. And I thought it was so beautiful to see that people are taking themselves into these beautiful mineral waters and enjoying the health benefits of that and sharing together and not minding the shape of themselves, not keeping themselves away, like unable to enjoy these beautiful things of the earth just because they think their body isn't good enough, or that they are their body. They're totally identified with that body. So we can turn that thought around. I have to be thin equals success, fat equals failure. I have thin thinking is what is my success. Thin thinking turned around to the opposite, the way we do just to play on what we're believing, just to get us to flip and try to see something in a new way. We turn things around that we believe to the opposite, or to our thinking, or just turn it around in all different kinds of ways that we can. So when I'm believing, thin is better, fat is worse, thin thinking might be better, and fat thinking is worse. Feeling. That means, how about if we thin down thoughts about diet and food, and nutrition and eating and exercising and what we should and shouldn't be doing all these moments of the day? How about if we just thin that way down and foster more trust in our daily experience of food and eating, and not have such a gripping, terrible drive for thinness and against being fat. It's like a drama and fear creating kind of story. So let me thin my thoughts out, like we're weeding out a garden, around this whole idea of thin and fat. So thin is better, thin is successful, thin thinking is better, thin thinking is more successful. Thinking less, that's what I mean by thin thinking. It's just think narrower, smaller, less, more tiny, all these things we associate with thinness. Just not spending so much time thinking about thinness would be thinner thinking. And perhaps, being less concerned with all our ideas about the body and how it needs to look so that we can be happy, because I notice it's not true. So just the simple turnaround, the simple straight up opposite. Thin is not successful, and fat is not a failure. Fat is just as successful, and thin could be a failure. That's been true for me in my life. When I lost so much weight, it was unhealthy. And when, I found myself condemning myself for being heavy on the other side of it. So there's the idea just came to me of out beyond the field of thin and fat, out beyond the ideas of thin and fat, there is a field. I'll meet you there, like the Rumi poem. Out beyond ideas of thin or fat, or being identified with this body. The body is who I am. I'll meet you in that field. That is an exciting place to be. That brings a whole newness, new exciting day to let's see what happens if I didn't have any conception that the goal is thinness or losing weight or something to do with the body. How about the goal is peace, eating peace, and have that be the only goal. Don't start getting thinness or weight or the number or any of that is part of this. Eating peace. When that is your number one intention and the number one place you're going to hold steady on with eating peace, your body will find its natural weight and it will be